Most people, when they think about the history of economics, immediately think of a few famous names, people like Adam Smith or Karl Marx. And maybe those who know a bit more history remember Aristotle. But there's something very few people know. Around 900 to 1,000 years ago, long before capitalism existed and long before central banks were even imagined, a Muslim thinker described the economic crises of today almost perfectly. His name was Al-Ghazali, and what he said was simple but incredibly powerful. If money loses its moral compass, societies begin to rot from the inside out. So come with me for a moment. Let's travel back in time. The year is around 1100. Europe at that time was poor, fragmented, and politically unstable. But the Islamic world was the complete opposite. Cities were wealthy, trade routes were full, and science and philosophy were flourishing. Cities like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, these weren't just cultural centers. They were also major financial hubs. Markets were full of activity. Caravans carried silk, spices, and silver across continents. Money was constantly circulating. But during this time, one scholar noticed something different. Society was getting richer, but people were beginning to change. And this is where Al-Ghazali enters the story. Al-Ghazali was not an ordinary scholar. He was a philosopher, a jurist, and a deep thinker. By the time he was 30 years old, he was already teaching at one of the most prestigious institutions of his time. But what made him truly different was this. He wasn't only thinking about religion, he was thinking about money. Yes, money. And he asked a simple question. What happens when a society becomes rich faster than it becomes wise? That single question shaped much of his thinking. According to Al-Ghazali, money was not what people believed it was. Money was not sacred. Money was not the ultimate goal. Money was only a tool. In fact, he compared money to something interesting, a mirror. A mirror has no value by itself. Its value comes from what it reflects. Money is the same. Its value doesn't come from gold or silver. Its value comes from allowing people to trade and cooperate with one another. But this is where Al-Ghazali's real warning begins. He said something very powerful. Money that sits locked in a chest is dead money. In other words, when people hoard wealth, trade slows down, people struggle to find work, and the economy begins to stagnate. He used a powerful metaphor. When money stops circulating, the bloodstream of society freezes. Even today, many economists say something very similar. But remember, he said this 1,000 years ago. Yet Al-Ghazali's harshest criticism was about something else, speculation. People making profits from crises, merchants manipulating prices, creating artificial shortages, profiting from other people's suffering. To Al-Ghazali, this wasn't intelligence. It was moral decay. He wrote something striking. Whoever profits from the suffering of others profits from corruption. And corruption spreads like a virus, first through the markets, then through institutions, and eventually through the entire society. But don't misunderstand him. Al-Ghazali was not against trade. In fact, he supported commerce. He didn't believe wealth was inherently bad, but there was one condition: honesty. If people used false weights, hid defects in their products, spread false information, then markets would collapse. Because in reality, the entire economy is built on one thing: trust. Al-Ghazali also had strong views about currency. At the time, some rulers would reduce the amount of gold or silver in their coins. In modern terms, they were creating inflation. It looked like the state was producing more money, but Al-Ghazali strongly condemned this. To him, it was simply another form of theft, because the value of money was quietly being reduced. And the people who suffered the most were the poor. But perhaps his most powerful idea was this: a society can survive poverty, but it cannot survive corruption. Economies rarely collapse because money disappears. They collapse because trust disappears. Look at the modern world. Massive debt, extreme wealth inequality, financial bubbles, growing distrust in institutions. These are the very problems Al-Ghazali described nearly 1,000 years ago. It's almost as if he could see the future. And his final message was simple: money is not just an economic tool. Money is a system of trust. And once people stop believing in that system, even the strongest economy can collapse. That's why Al-Ghazali's warning from 1,000 years ago still matters today. When justice disappears, prosperity disappears with it. And maybe the most uncomfortable question of all is this: are we getting closer to that point today?